95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for joining our show. Special thanks to Chicago folks. Thank you for watching our show. We have a large audience there, so thank you for supporting us. Today we have a local superstar. We have Thomas Sparkershot Griffin. He's been a trailblazer in the Indianapolis music and radio scene since 1973. He started one of the city's first club DJs. He played an essential role in spreading funk and soul across local venues. He's had a lasting impact on WTLC, the first all-black FM station, and helping shape its identity from hosting the Saturday night basement party to contributor to the Reggie Miller Show. He's always been a community advocate and provided great music. Good morning, Sparkershot. Mr. Griffin, how you doing today, sir?
And not too bad at all. Look, and I didn't know you're going to do all that kind of stuff. I would have given you something much shorter to talk about.
Yeah, but you at Transition, you're doing a lot of community type things. So what is the Urban Servant Leadership Conference and why was it created?
This event was originally created by Pastor John Gurton. John has been a advocate for justice for the city of Indianapolis for a long time. And just to give you a quick background, I transitioned from radio DJ to working at WTLC AM. We did a show called The Bottom Line with Willie Frank Middlebrook. And from that show, I kind of got more involved with community issues. So I work with the Indianapolis Black Chamber. I work with Indianapolis chapter of Indiana Black Expo. I work with Community Action of Greater Indianapolis because I recognize some of the problems and the ills that are going on in our community. So one of the things that stands out totally is with the advent of this current political climate, we as a Black community, and this is my opinion, we as a Black community must come together to start dealing with issues because so many of our organizations work out of their own individual silos where strength is in numbers. So the purpose for this event coming up on next Saturday, June the 21st at Martin University is to try to attempt the first step in bringing some of these groups, clubs, organizations, churches together to create one common cause or one common goal.
Well, the term servant leadership is a powerful term. Can you break down exactly what it means in the context of this conference?
Well, you know, and I know there are a lot of religious leaders, political leaders, community leaders that have opinions about how things should be or how things should work. But when have they ever all come together for one common goal or one common cause? So yourself being a lawyer in the city of Indianapolis, but being a revered and respected lawyer in the city of Indianapolis, you are a servant leader. You lead by what you do as a job, but you still serve our community. So if we could get more of servant type leaders to come together for one common goal, we could start impacting things in our community.
Well, who is this event for? Is it tailored to activists, educated, everyday community members, or for everyone, and why?
And so, you know, I laugh about that. In our community, we have that line, it's for everybody. This is for everybody. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be certain segments to this event that could impact you in a positive way. And not you personally, but you people in the community. So it's one of those deals where we have a million problems that need to be addressed. We're not going to fix them all in one day, but let's come together and try to identify 5 to 10 major problems that we can work on collectively.
Well, with so much happening politically, I mean, every day, I mean, heck, you wake up from tragedies to dictatorship.
Yes.
How does the conference tend to address specific challenges facing Black community, particularly in light of the fact that we're looking at funding, we're looking at over-aggressive military intrusion. We're doing a parade today in D.C. that seems like something like a dictatorship from a third world country. So
exactly.
Where do we start?
So, and I guess that's what this is all about. And that's why, Nathaniel, though you may not be involved with this specifically, but you are the kind of guy that we're looking for to start helping put these groups together. And everybody has a role that they can play. Let's be honest, just our community alone, we've got education issues, housing issues, finance issues, job issues. We have so many issues in the Black community. We can't fix them individually, but collectively, I think we can deal with that. So you talk about a parade that's going on in Washington, D.C. Is that not the craziest thing you've ever heard of from an American politician? You know what I'm saying? And so we, as a collective, we can't stop that from happening. But as a collective, we can then say, hey, this is crazy, and we don't want to see that. We don't want to participate in that. Or we're going to do everything we can to try to get politicians, or the correct politicians, to stop this kind of foolishness going on in America.
Man, you got your work cut out for you. But walk me through today, what kind of workshop, speakers, or session can attendants expect? Like, for example, I noticed, maybe a lot of people didn't pay attention, it seemed like during from slavery time through Jim Crow laws, during the Black codes, one of the leaders in our community have been the Black churches, as you know. They've been instrumental, not just the Dr. Martin Luther King type folks, but there was a whole potpourri of people that was out there educating the masses and working hard to give us civil rights and fair results. But what kind of speakers you're going to have in the sessions that the attendants can expect from this conference?
Well, the main speaker is named Tyranny C. Bonds, and she's related to Julian Bonds, for any of your viewers or listeners that know that name, who's a civil rights, well, what do you call him, a civil rights icon. You stop and think that we have some icons in Indianapolis. So over at, what is it, St. John's, where Dr. Andrew J. Brown was the pastor, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a good, close friend of Dr. Martin Luther King. I work hand in hand with his son, Thomas L. Brown, and we talk about issues on a regular basis. So these are the type of people that I feel need to be at this event. And if you're not a theologian, if you're not a pastor, you need to come. But if you are a pastor, that is where I think we as a community can be the strongest. We have churches on every other corner. In the Black community, there are churches in the 46218 area of Indianapolis. There, I think, is 150 churches. That is crazy to me, that if those churches, just 10% of them could ever come together. Think of the impact they could make as a collective, because the old saying goes, there's strength in numbers.
That's an amazing statistic. You know, I didn't realize that in that one zip code, and a lot of people don't realize that area is like, if you're going on the east side of Indy, I think 1-8 starts right around the Keystone area or somewhere in that area, goes over to, I can't remember what street, but I have a lot of clients in that vicinity, and it's a very fascinating area. But I did not realize there's 150 churches.
Think about this, and next time you're out and about, you just got a nice lazy afternoon, get on 38th and Keystone and just drive east to maybe down to Shaylin, then go down, up and down what used to be called Martindale Street, but now it's Dr. Andrew J. Brown. You can count churches just on those corners. Then when you go into the neighborhoods, there's churches directly across the street from each other. So, and we're talking everything from Catholic, Pentecostal, Apostolic, Church of God in Christ. We have so many churches just in that zip code. It just makes you scratch your head. It's like, okay, why can't these churches, if they all believe in the same thing, why can't these churches come together for just, let's find one common goal that we can work on as a collective?
Well, okay, so this is not just about talk, it's about action. What tangible tools or strategies will attendants leave with to protect and unite in
Right.
their community?
Well, and therein lies that. Now, that's the hard question, because the reality of all of this is this: until we come together and find out what common goals we have, we can then coordinate a common strategy. You know, I can tell you what I think needs to happen, but let's be honest and realistic. You might have a completely different thought. So once we come together as a group, we can strategize on what needs to be addressed and how we're going to address it.
Well, I can tell you my thought is I've been preaching it every week. We have 470,000 registered Democrats in Marion County and only about 210,000 show up to vote.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 200 and some odd thousand African American voters and about 80 to 90,000 vote. So my main issue is we have to get our folks to show up and vote in each election. And more importantly, they have to get their neighbors or friends to vote. And one of the things that we're seeing in our state, we're seeing an overreach by a supermajority in the state house and senate.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing Indianapolis is a wonderful place to live, but I don't want people from rural America outside of Indianapolis trying to tell Indianapolis folks how we should live, who should we date, where we should worship, what our schools should be run, our justice system. You know, so we're getting too much outside influence.
Right.
And then from time to time, we hear these insulting remarks from the state house, like the lieutenant governor somehow thought it was a good idea of Missouri compromises. They have to be the
Right.
dumbest political things I've heard. And so my number one thing is, if we get the churches all on board to do one thing,
Yes.
that is in their congregation, make sure on a weekly basis, everybody's registered to vote, and everybody in the church contact 10 people, make sure they're registered, and make sure the election in the primary and the next election, everybody vote. We have a midterm election coming up in 2026. And so my strategy to them today is start working today, because Mr. Griffith, one of the problems that we have is that we just don't have enough wealth in our community to fund some of these outrageous costs for campaign.
Right.
In the last mayor election, we had a billionaire attempt to buy the mayor's election, spent 15, 16 million of his own money.
Yeah.
And in the prosecutor's race, we saw the Republican Party field a candidate that had no qualification to be a trial lawyer, none, and they spent $500,000 on negative ads a few weeks before the election.
Well, I tell you something else that's just as stupid. We're spending thousands of dollars to influence a school board election. Why would you want to influence a school board election? So it's a process that's already in place that the minority community is not aware of. And it's a plan. It's a plan across the board. When I used to do the talk show on AM 1310 with Willie Frank, he had a line that's very simple. It is up to us to save us. And in the Indianapolis community, what we have allowed to happen back in the 60s, I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, once we allowed Unigov, that threw a monkey wrench into everything. Because what you stated earlier is that now we have the suburbs telling the inner city how to conduct business, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes. And now, how can someone attend this conference, turn what they learn to real change in their neighborhood or workplace? Also, don't forget to keep telling us the location of this conference and the time, some of the details.
And I'll do that. But I want to circle back to something you just said, which I agree with 1,000%. We need to educate our people on the importance of voting. But the problem is, and I know that people get mad at me when I say this, but because they don't know what or who to vote for, some of them are voting, but they're still voting what I consider the wrong way, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So where is our educational process to say you need to vote, but you should consider voting this way because just because I told you to vote, I think they said 40% of the Latino community voted for Donald Trump, which was truly against their own personal What's the line I'm looking for? When you vote against
Self-interest.
your own yeah, it wouldn't come out. Voting against your own personal self-interest. How lost are you to do something like that? So we need to educate folks. So on next Saturday, that's June the 21st, 8:30 in the morning is when doors open. We'll be there till 3 o'clock. We'll have keynote speaker from Tyranny Bond, who's, like I said, a relative of Julia Bond. We'll give you a breakfast and a lunch break and breakout sessions. And so we have a lot of things going on. And just being totally honest with you, it may be a little bit overwhelming. We might have a little bit too much going on, but you got to start somewhere. And as we do this thing going forward, hopefully we can fine tune it.
Hey, Attorney Prime, real quickly, is there one of the concerns? Attorney Prime, as a career federal government lawyer, he worked for the Justice Department, had a distinguished career there for 3 decades. One of the issues that come up, this voting issue, I'm concerned. I'm not sure Mr. Griffith is, but is the Justice Department still have that civil rights division in place to protect the voters' rights, or what's going on in that issue?
Well, hey, it's good to be part of the program, and certainly it's good to see you, sir. And now, one of the things that's really important that goes to this particular issue is that elections matter. There's so many people in our community that say, hey, it doesn't matter if you vote for this person or the other. And this is a classic example of why elections matter. As your listeners may recall, the key of the modern civil rights movement were the passage of the Fair Housing Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Civil Rights Act. And there's a lot of discretion built in those pieces of legislation in terms of enforcement. So what a lot of press reports have indicated is that the department is not doing its traditional role in terms of investigating these cases, but instead repurposing individual attorneys to investigate reverse discrimination cases. So that is certainly problematic, especially in the voting area, because the thing that people have to understand is that, African Americans got the right to vote, through constitutional amendment. But for 100 years, there were various schemes that were put into place to make sure that their vote was diluted and did not count. And so it's really important that we have a strong Department of Justice that's looking at these nefarious plans and seeing if they're an attempt to really, bring us back as a country to not having, complete access. So in answer to your question, there have been press reports, there have been anecdotal reports from, those of my former colleagues who worked at the Civil Rights Division that have indicated that the focus is entirely different. It's not the same as it previously was on protecting individuals' rights to vote. Instead, the focus is on, making sure there's no diversity, equity, inclusion, making sure there's no reverse discrimination, things of that sort.
Okay, we have a caller. Caller, you have a question for our host today, real quickly?
Yes, I do. Brother Griffin, Fred Cox here. Good to see you this morning and doing what you're saying and saying what you're doing. But listen, my question is simply this, and Attorney Prime, you might be able to deal with this as well, Attorney Lee. It seems that we have some problems with our brown cousins. They're upset that Black folks aren't getting out and supporting them in these protests against Trump. So I know the churches are doing their thing to get us to get out to vote, but there seems to be a problem with the Hispanic side of the family that says, we're not doing enough for them. So if you guys would address it, I'd appreciate it. And again, Brother Griffin, it's good to see you. And I'll hang up on this.
Hey, you better stay on for this, man, because I got some strong feelings about this before my guest gets started. I grew up in the segregated South, and when I attended high school as part of the forced desegregation, when we went to the high school, we had a bunch of racial bigots in administration. In protests of overt bigotry, the Black students, after about 6 weeks of school, we all walked out of classes and had I I don't know, we walked out and we started chanting and things like that. Now, at my school, we had Hispanic students from Cuba, we had people from Mexico and Puerto Rico, and we had white students. Not a single student that white or Hispanic participated. What people knew was racial bigotry. And it was fixed because black students said, we're not coming back to school until you fix this. And so the principal folded and agreed to some of the demands the students were making. And the point I'm making is that we didn't get any help from any of our other students to things that everybody knew was wrong. So I don't know. When I look at this situation, and I think back in the last election, what Mr. Griffith talked about, the number of people who voted against their self-interest, I don't know. I'm probably going to sit out this fight.
So I don't blame you. I'd sit it out too, because and most of the people, the response I've been seeing is that, hey, you guys made your choice when you made that decision several months ago, and now live with it. We have our own job to take care of, and I think the way Brother Griffin's talking about getting together with these churches and making sure we get out and vote, and Attorney Lee, you've been saying that for some time. We have to get out and vote and to make a difference. It's time for us to do something. Get up off your rear ends and do it. And with that, gentlemen, I'm going to listen to the rest of the call.
Mr. Griffin, go ahead, sir.
Well, the one thing that always is amazing to me is we always downplay education. And I'm not talking about book learning. I'm not talking about college. I'm talking about being knowledgeable about issues. So I don't know who in the Latin community is saying, these are the issues, these are the things that would help you. And if you vote this way, that's going to hurt you. If you vote that way, it's going to help you. So what we have done, and I'm saying not black people, but as a community, we have failed to educate folks on the ills of voting in the wrong way. And so in this particular instance, I think Kamala Harris told them what was going to happen. If I'm not mistaken, Hillary Clinton told them what was going to happen. Both of those ladies laid it out up front. If you vote for this guy, this is what's going to happen. Everything they said has come to fruition. At what point can we get people to understand, hey, we've shown you what's going to happen wrong. Now, after we've shown you, now you want us to come and save you. I'm sorry. We tried to tell you. Your parents used to tell you a hard head makes a soft behind. So I can understand why we, the black community, is not trying to save our Latino brothers and sisters. But hopefully, after this go round in the midterms, they will understand that if you come and stand with us, we all are going to win or benefit.
I got great sympathy for what's happening, and I'll do individually whatever I can to help out, because I don't like the optic of what I see, this excessive use of force. I think it's outrageous. That's one thing I'm going to talk to Marlon about. We're using the military against civilians. Mm-hmm. That is a clear violation of our federal laws. And so I don't like what's going on. And eventually, I think that there's going to be massive civil lawsuits against this misconduct. I see a level of criminality in America now that I've never seen before. I don't know whether or not, but go ahead, Marlon.
Yeah, and then I was just going to say that, if we don't remember the past, we're condemned to repeat it. The problem when you have military in civilian areas is they're not trained to do that. Everyone should learn the lesson of Kent State University, which is not very far from where I grew up and practiced law, where the National Guard was called out, and a number of students were shot and killed. So you have to be very, very careful about that. And there is federal legislation indicating that military officials should not be involved for that very reason in the local affairs. So it's very, very dangerous. The other thing is that there is a federal judge in California that issued an order just in the last day indicating that it's the governor that calls up the National Guard, and that the president certainly did not comply with those particular rules, and indicated that the president has to turn over authority to the governor of California regarding, bringing out the National Guard. But I think we should be troubled that, hey, if this does happen, innocent people could get harmed like they were at Kent State University. It's something that we need to be really concerned about.
So, gentlemen, I have a question, because both of you all are lawyers, so I need to understand that if the president calls out the National Guard, how can he do that if the other legislators allow that to happen? Why isn't somebody following the rule of law? And that's the part that I don't understand. We act as if the gentleman that sits in the White House is autonomous and he can just do what he wants to do and everybody goes along with it. If there are rules in place, whose job is it to enforce the rules to make sure he does the right thing the right way?
Well, to answer your question, the Posse Comitatus Act was enacted back in 1800, I think 1878. But that law prohibits the use of the U.S. Army and Air Force to enforce civilian laws within the United States of America. It was passed to prevent the military from being used to interfere in domestic affairs, particularly after the Reconstruction era. While it's primarily restricted to Army and Air Force, the Navy, Marines, and Space Force have always been brought under this umbrella, right? So let me tell you historically why this is important. When council talked about Kent State University, as I recall, they had a lot to do with the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was very unpopular. Unfortunately, I got in the military right at the end of the Vietnam War, which was 1973. So in 1973, this is what the Army did. If you were in the military in 1973 and you were in the specialized training like infantry, jungle warfare, you could not wear a military uniform outside of the base. So when you travel on the airline, you have to buy civilian clothing. That's what they did for us. The reason being is that you're taught to do one thing as a soldier, that is to kill people. You're not taught to restrain people. You're taught to aim and shoot, stab, bomb, whatever. And that's what you're taught to do. So these trained killers cannot be the solution to protest. It's ludicrous.
So how do we stop that though? Who authorizes that to happen? So is it a congressional deal? Because if the president says go to this state where he has no power, because the governor is supposed to be the one that makes that call, how is that happening? That's the part that I don't understand, just as a civilian. How does that happen?
I don't know. I better ask Marlon, because I'm not quite sure.
Now, what shouldn't be happening, and so what's basically happening in terms of answering your question, and as Nathaniel has pointed out a number of times on this broadcast, there've been over 200 lawsuits filed against this administration for alleged violations of constitutional rights and constitutional norms. So that's the one way that we can restrain, one of the three branches of government that we believe, acts inconsistent with the constitutional structure. And so, as I indicated before, in response to calling up the National Guard, a federal judge recently indicated that that was an overreach and that was impermissible. It is on appeal, so we'll see what happens in the Ninth Circuit and maybe even the Supreme Court if that ruling is that ruling is adhered to, or whether or not they allow the president to do what he is doing. But I agree, it's just part of policing and some of the reforms that have come about from the various lawsuits and the tragedies around the country, whether it be Trayvon Martin, a whole, series of cases, is that there's been a push for police to have de-escalation, have sensitivity to the populations that they police. How can you do that, as Nathaniel said, with a group of people that aren't soldiers, that aren't trained to do that? They're just trained to kill. So what you're doing is you're putting that group of people into a very tense situation. And so when it happened in Ohio, you got the result you got at Kent State University. They weren't trained in that manner in terms of de-escalation. Their training, as Nathaniel indicated, is to, kill, things of that sort. So I think we got to be very, very careful. There have been a lot of lawsuits that have been filed. There's certainly ways that your listeners can support the entities that are, filing these suits. Those are things that you can look at, and then also look through your legislative branch. And the main thing that you can do in terms of combating it is to register to vote, find out what position your elected officials have taken, and make sure you let your voice be heard and you exercise that right to vote, not only in the presidential year, but during the midterms as well, and also in your state and local.
Okay, Imhotep, go ahead, sir. One of our callers. Go ahead, caller.
All right. I've already got it. Can you hear me, Nate?
Loud and clear, sir. Go ahead.
All right, good. And Brother Griffin, all right, good to see you on here with the legal show. Okay, all right.
Yes, sir.
Let's not forget about the MOVE headquarters either. I was up there in Philly when that happened. That's the one other time that the United States government military bombed its own civilians. Let's not forget MOVE. Those brothers and sisters and kids up there that were all bombed and killed. Wilson Good was the mayor. Brother was the mayor at the time. It ordered that, Brother Griffin. You remember that?
Yes.
Wasn't that something?
Yes.
I'm telling you. We're looking at a dystopian nightmare, but I don't know if the question was thoroughly answered. Because, Brother Griffin, I thought the Justice Department and Congress were supposed to make sure they rein in the laws, and we see that that's been compromised. So if we had somebody to stop it right now, to literally put a stop to these matters,
Right.
then we would have that, and we don't see. Your question is very valid. We don't have that. Let's just be simple about it, because if we did, we'd have a severe stoppage of it. We just had a Supreme Court that approved Elon Musk and Doge to be able to get all the Social Security numbers for everybody. Why? Why do they need that information? What's the purpose of it? What's the logic? I thought law was supposed to be logic. Nathaniel Lee, I'm a medical professional. We deal with the scientific process. So where's the scientific process that Doge and Elon Musk needs to have everybody's Social Security number? You can't find it. So the problem in this country is when Citizens United was passed, was approved by SCOTUS, and big money came into politics, that knocked out the 99%.
Exactly.
This country's a plutocracy governed by the rich, an oligarchy, an aristocracy, and a kleptocracy. That's exactly what it is. The United States is a corporation. It's not a country. It's a corporation. And that's what we're dealing with here. As it pertains to our Latino brethren and sisters, we told them before. We told them back when Hillary ran. Hillary told them. They didn't vote that way. You have misogyny and racism that runs rampant, along with people want to say they're Roman Catholics and a third. Don't get me started on the Roman Catholic Church. It was Pope John Paul that went through and apologized to every African nation when he was the Pope for slavery. So let's not get with this Roman Catholic stuff. Okay, we got to remember history. All right, it's misogyny and racism is the reason why they did not overwhelm it. They should have overwhelmingly. They voted for Kamala, split men and women at 54%, but they gave Donald Trump 42%. There's no way in the world Donald Trump telling them what he's going to do should have gotten 42% of their vote. Should have been low single digits like it was when you combine black women and black men. It was low single digits. So the problem is that we're going to have to just take our medicine. They're going to have to take our medicine to the point. Look at that. We're doing stuff, Attorney Lee, the Target protest, the Amazon bike boycott. Now they're going after Dollar General. Look at the colleges and universities. We're now sending more of our children to HBCUs. We've been studying doing something. When the Target boycott started, we didn't see any of them. We didn't see them at all. We saw the LGBT community.
because in Minnesota, Target turned their back on them, so they really was upset. But we didn't see anybody else. I mean, what about the Arab community in Michigan and Wisconsin? Attorney Lee, let's not absolve them. They came out last night, say they were mad about the bombings going on in Israel, in Iran and the Middle East. Okay, well, the imam in Michigan, the main guy, stood there on the stage with Trump, and overwhelmingly, 63%, they voted for Trump. They didn't listen to Trump. They have to take their medicine. We've been taking it since Bacon's Rebellion. We've got these laws. We're fighting laws. Affirmative action. An Asian student helped get affirmative action struck down. He was used by the white aristocracy because those positions have not gone to Asian students. They've gone to white and legacy white students. That's where they've gone to. Okay, so he was used. They seem to not understand that assimilation doesn't work because the European male, in his thirst for control and power, he's obsessive compulsive. He's obsessed with control. He makes the law to benefit him, not to benefit anybody else. We had that short period of time, Reconstruction, and then Grant and Rutherford B. Hayes turned their back on that. And then we had the 50s, the 60s with the Great Society, and then the Civil Rights Act, and then lo and behold, Reagan come in and start dismantling that. So I don't know. I don't know where we go. But it's a never-ending story. It's a dystopian nightmare. And Noam Chomsky spoke on it years ago.
It sounds like you need to go to Spark and Sock's event next week and talk to these people, man. Make sure you show up for that event next Saturday.
I'll be in LA for a while, but when I get back, me and him already gonna work on some things, and then they're gonna. But I mean, you guys, you've seen it. It's a never-ending story. It's over and over and over again, and it's purposely set up that way. It's set up that way. Thanks, Marco.
So you know what that means, which I come circle back what I say all the time. It is up to us to save us. So we proved that during the 1920s with Tulsa, Oklahoma, that we can have a community where we do our own thing. The difference now is we can do that exact same thing, at least in my opinion. The only difference is now we're in a better position to defend ourselves from some of the craziness that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and some of the other places around America during that period of time. But to continue to ask permission or to continue to try to attempt to be part of something where somebody has told you blatantly, we don't want you, we don't like you, we're not going to help you. Why do we continue as Black people to continue to be their friend or their associate or their acolyte or their whatever you want to call it? Why do we continue to do that instead of getting our own?
Well, there's something that I saw the other day that was very fascinating. They were saying that the Army, for example, is like 49% minority now in terms of the Army. And so I think that's important. When I was in law school, I learned that, Vietnam War was basically over at that time, but there was something very fascinating about it. It ended in 1973, but the problem that existed is that when we had, I can't think of the name of the gentleman who came to our law school class, but he said that half of the soldiers killed in Vietnam were Black soldiers. And at the time, I think Black males were about 7% or 6% of the population in America, but there were 50% of the soldiers killed in combat duty in Vietnam. I had a personal connection because I had a brother who was shot down in a helicopter in Vietnam that got critical injury. So the point is that there is a use of the military now that I've seen that I think is unprecedented in our country. So I'm concerned about that as an American citizen. When I see soldiers, Marines, Marlon, I saw Marine in fully decked out combat attire. What they have, grenades, they have, when I saw that picture, I said, this has got to be the most ludicrous things I've ever seen. So you had protesters, at the worst case scenario, would throw a bottle or something, if that. But in this case, they weren't throwing anything. And so you have Marines that somehow is brought down. And that's what I just think that's just horrible in terms of abuse of power.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I think we just have to pray that there's not a major incident, but it's a tinder keg right here. And anything can happen, especially when emotions are high on both sides and you have a group of people that aren't trained to do what they're asked to be done. The other thing that's really important that kind of is a parallel conversation is that, today there is a military parade under the guise that this is a, celebration of the anniversary of the Army and also coincides with the president's birthday. And many people are concerned that it almost has the feel of a campaign rally. And it's just very important, and many generals and those in leadership that have been around for a number of decades have really fought against any perception of the military being for one political party or another. And that's very dangerous. We need to make sure that people are aware that the military isn't Democrat or Republican. Hey, they're nonpartisan. That's why those rules regarding not being involved in politics, on duty, are really strongly enforced in the military. And so that fine line, at least in my estimation, it's being breached here by having this type of celebration. So we have to be concerned about that, and we also have to be concerned about the fact that our military are being used for a purpose that they're not trained for, and that's something that could lead to a catastrophe.
So my question then comes back full circle, and I ask the same questions over and over and over. Where is the accountability? Who is the person that has allowed these people to violate the rules? If we have laws in place that are supposed to address these situations so they don't happen, how in the world are these things happening? That's the question that doesn't make sense to me.
Let me just tell you what's supposed to happen. I mean, you have, three, coordinate branches of government.
Right.
And, at the federal level. And what's supposed to happen is that, hey, if there is overreach, there's government oversight committees. They're supposed to have hearings, hold people accountable. They have the impeachment power. But one of the things that, the listener should be aware of is that we haven't heard anything about these abuses of power and, these federal court decisions that are really just indicating that the administration is far past the line. But we've heard nothing from individuals in Congress that are supposed to do oversight. Now, if your listeners will remember, during the Obama administration, they were on top of every particular issue that came about. But even minor issues that really had no bearing on the health and safety of our population. But here you're having critical issues that really impact the constitutional right and life and death decisions that could impact those in the community, and we're hearing nothing. So I think what we have to do is say, hey, these individuals that are on oversight, whether they're in the House or the Senate, you have to look and see who's on those committees. Why aren't they saying anything? And, you have to, to the extent that you have dollars available, spend those for individuals that are going to hold the administration accountable. And then if you don't have the resources, backing individuals in your community that are speaking out, that are indicating there's a clear and present danger. Those are things that can be done. The next thing that, can be done is making sure that individuals, these organizations that are filing suit, there's over 200 lawsuits. Number of them need support, such as the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund, the ACLU, a lot of unions. A lot of these individuals are at the forefront of filing these lawsuits. So to the extent that your audience could be supportive of those efforts is another positive thing that in fact can be done. And then just understanding that elections matter. We have to really not only just educate our community and let them know that, hey, elections matter. They have consequences. So, and not only during presidential years, but they have consequences during off years as well. Those are something that's very important lesson to our community as well. So I think we need to look at those particular things if we want to hold the administration accountable and make sure that our democracy maintains itself.
Mr. Griffin, one final comment about your event. There's a lot of issues that you have to deal with that's important to our community. We have issues in our community such as policing.
Yes.
I mean, there was a point in time that we had 18 African Americans shot in a 3-month period by police officers, and none of those matters have been adjudicated yet. It was shameful by the administration. We have a political climate here locally where there's been some allegation of misconduct in the mayor's office. So there's a lot of issues that are important to our community. And then some of the basic issues like street repairs.
Right.
There's too many potholes on the east side of Indy. And so which one of these issues do you think going to be at the forefront, and how do we deal with them?
Oh, well, I know that Vanessa Summers will be there as one of our panelists. And so she'll be talking about some of the things that are going to impact us as a community. I'm not sure if potholes is going to be on the agenda, but I understand exactly what you're saying, which is that we have enough issues in Indianapolis that if we can vet as many of them as possible, put as many of them on the table as possible, then from this conference, ideally, we'll be able to whittle it down and say, these are the things that we need to address as a collective group. Now, once this event is over, about 2 weeks to 30 days after that event, we'll have a comprehensive review of everything that was done, everything that was said, and you'll be able to break it down, read it, analyze it, and then we can come back and revisit those issues, possibly on your show or some of the other shows, and just talk about this is what we heard from the people, this is how we're going to deal with it, this is how it needs to be addressed, and this is what we can do for our community.
Well, it sounds like it's something you have to do multiple times. I don't know, based on this aggressive agenda that you're trying to involve, that you'll be able to do it with one meeting. It sounds like you have to have multiple follow-ups on this in order to
things
have
like this have to be an ongoing. This is just the beginning of an ongoing plan to move our community forward. And just like Marlon was saying, at the end of the day, we have a lot of political issues. And you got a lot of suits and people suing this and suing that, but that's time consuming. Where are we, Black people, going to come together with a cohesive plan to address it, not expeditiously, because and I know when you go to filing lawsuits, it takes time. So while those are going on, what's going on behind the curtain? So we need to have some plans we can jump on things immediately while we're waiting for these lawsuits to come to fruition.
Thank you very much.
Brother Griffin, you were absolutely correct. And I think not only in that statement, but your earlier statement about, whether they be churches or Black organizations, just getting together, getting on the same page and saying, hey, what is the one thing that we can do that's important? I think diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, that's a very important issue. If we can all get on the same page and let our voices be heard and say, hey, if you look, at the Kerner Commission report after the riots around the United States, one of the things that they indicated is that there are 2 different paths in America, one Black, one white, and they have very different opportunities. As a result of that, then you saw affirmative action, you saw efforts to make African Americans be included in the overall society. And if we're going back on that, through some of the things that we're hearing from this administration, that's a clear and present danger for, our communities. And so if we can get on the same page and getting that message out and demanding it of our politicians and making that part of our agenda, I think that would go a long way to being of assistance in moving things forward.
Hey, Attorney Brian, let me talk to you a little bit about your firm, because your law firm, do you guys do multi-state litigation?
Yes, we do. We do all types of litigation. We're a firm that's been in existence about 25 years, and a number of our attorneys, partners have come from other firms. So we do all types of litigation. We're based in Ohio, Florida, and Michigan, and we have some presence in Arizona as well.
And what these issues that we're dealing with today, there's all sorts of things that I see in our society that troubles me. One of the things, of course, we have an issue locally with police misconduct that we're dealing with on a regular basis. But we have other issues. It seems like civil rights laws have been abrogated. It seems like when I look at those decisions, I see cases now that talks about reverse discrimination, but I don't see the traditional lawsuit. These laws were designed to protect Blacks, give them certain rights, or minorities, and it seems like those laws are being abrogated. What's going on?
Well, that's certainly problematic. There's a 9-0 decision that was recently issued this past week because your listeners may know that in order for someone to bring a reverse discrimination case, for example, a white person saying they're discriminated against, by programs that were, meant to benefit African Americans, the standard was that they had to demonstrate that, hey, it's the unusual circumstance where the majority would be excluded, and they had an extra burden of proof. And what the Supreme Court basically said in that 9-0 decision is there's no extra burden of proof. There's just standard. So it's going to bring on more lawsuits by those in the majority. Now, the 9-0 decision came in a case, where someone indicated that they were not LGBTQ and that they were adversely impacted because they were straight. And the court basically indicated in that situation there wasn't an extra burden of proof that this straight person had to, set forth in order to be successful. So they're going to use that particular case on the flip side to basically say a white person in the majority is going to be able to bring suit without having what a number of the circuits recognized was an extra burden of proof, because that case law said it's the unusual circumstances that majority is going to be discriminated against. So as a consequence, there's an extra burden of proof that you have to demonstrate discrimination. Now that no longer exists. And so you have that coupled with the Department of Justice. And as I indicated before, a number of press reports, a number of employees that have quit have indicated that the focus is different, that it's not on housing discrimination, on voting rights, employment. They're moving to make sure universities such as Harvard, other prominent cases, that they're not enacting diversity, equity, inclusion policies. And as many of your listeners will remember, those policies were enacted because African Americans, such as my aunt, her family lived in Georgia for decades, and she couldn't go to the University of Georgia. At that time, the state of Georgia paid those Black students in the 1950s to go to New York University, other universities, because they had a segregation policy. So in the aftermath of that, these universities took affirmative steps to make sure the people that were blocked out got opportunities. And now what the administration is focusing on is saying that those efforts to make our universities more inclusive, that's discriminatory. And then with the new Supreme Court case, it's going to make it easier to make those challenges. So it is certainly troubling times.
Well, we saw, most people don't realize, we had a rapid decline of African American Black students going to advanced education institution all around the globe. We looked at the local university here in the state of Indiana, law school, that typically would admit 30 to 35 Black students. This class this year only admitted one Black student. And so we're seeing, I don't think most Black folks realize the significant rollback in the ability for us to get ahead. I attended the University of Georgia Law School because they were segregated. They didn't admit Blacks for a long time. And by the time I came along, thank God they would admit a few, but they had a threat of lawsuit because they did have affirmative action. Their affirmative action, if you were white, you had politically connected, or you had wealth, then you got into law school. And then eventually they allowed a few of us to get into law school, but when we got in, they gave us full scholarship. But here's a troubling thing, Marlon. This Justice Department today that you spent your career working at, is that the same Justice Department? It's almost like it's the Injustice Department now. What the hell's going on there?
It's certainly problematic in terms of some of the things that we're seeing there and some of the things that we're hearing. And again, it's something that, we really need to be concerned about. It's my hope that during the midterms, that there'll be a strong showing and that, there'll be a Democratic taking over the House and they'll be able to have oversight hearings in terms of, what is going on. Now, the challenge, and at least, what my perspective is that if Congress passes a rule, whether it be the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Civil Rights Act, the executive branch, can't basically say, I'm going to invalidate that particular legislation. You have to go through the legislative process in order to do that. So the problem in terms of what's been done is that there's, just moving back and acting as if this legislation doesn't exist and being very hostile to it. You have to follow the law. If you don't like it, then you go through the legislative process and you get it overturned. You just can't do it by judicial fiat and say, I'm not going to enforce the law. So that's what the problem is. But we do need individuals to get out there and vote. We need people to educate other individuals so that the word gets out, so that we make sure that these hard-fought rights, these hard-fought pieces of legislation are being effectively utilized and they're reaching their intended purpose.
One final question on this issue. The Justice Department never had a lot of African Americans to start with.
That's true.
Well, what did it look like now?
There are a number of people that you and I both know that are taking those buyouts because the issue is, hey, they may work in the Civil Rights Division and they're used to going around the country making sure that, there are no barriers to voting or there's no employment discrimination. And then they're getting these memos that, hey, we're repurposing that. The other thing that your listeners should know about is that the Department of Justice has a number of settlement agreements with jurisdictions around the country, and the administration has indicated they're not going to enforce those pieces of legislation. So, and ask the court to kind of, rescind those settlement agreements or rescind oversight. So that's really dangerous because a lot of these issues were, very strongly documented. The Civil Rights Division came in and did, investigation in some instances for years. Was a consent decree, and what that basically means is the local jurisdiction agreed that they had some problems and agreed to address those issues. And now what we're seeing is the Department of Justice go full circle and say, hey, you don't have to abide by that agreement anymore. So that's a clear and present danger to our people and something that people need to be made aware of.
One final comment, Mr. Griffith, we're getting ready to close out. Where do people need to come next Saturday again?
Saturday, June the 21st, Martin University. That's right there on the corner of 28th and Sherman Drive. We open the doors at 8:30 in the morning. The event goes up all the way until 3. We'll have a continental breakfast, a lunch, breakout sessions, and a keynote speaker, and some political individuals from the city of Indianapolis that could give us some insight on some of the things that need to happen in our city and in the country going forward.
Attorney Prime, how can people contact you? Every time I go out in the community, when I leave this show, people talk to me. So how can people contact you? They're asking me for your information. So could you give us information?
Yes. I have my email address, maprimes@bmdllc.com. And you can reach me. That's probably the best way of reaching me. And you can go online and look at my firm's website. And I'm available to be of assistance. God gave me the opportunity to get a legal education. My father is a truck driver. My mother basically was a domestic worker. And so to be able to get those benefits, I want to be of assistance to people. So to the extent that I can help you, reach out and let me know, and I'll do what I can to help you. But it's very important what Brother Griffin said. We need to organize. We need to work together. We need to have community events so that we understand what the issues are and how we can work together to solve these problems.
Well, thank you very much. And I thank you, our audience and our call in. Join us next Saturday once again as we deal with legal issues of the day. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed weekend. And happy Father's Day to all those dads out there. Keep doing a good job.